Welcome, Maria. Thank you so much for making time for us as always. Hope you've been well. Like you mentioned prior to the interview, it's been exactly 1 year since we last spoke. Hope all's been well for you.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having me again. It's always an exciting time getting to catch up and talk to PTV. So yeah, no, all good. Shukr. Everything's been great this past year and inshallah, only getting better.
Great. Wishes with you and the team always. So Saudi Arabia seems to be a very lucky place for you. We saw that wonder goal which you scored, and now you joined the club over there as well. How did this come about for you? How excited are you regarding this professional move? What could this do for you? And of course, being the captain of the Pakistan team, you hold a lot of responsibility as well. Do you see this being a transition and a breakthrough for other Pakistani girls as well?
Yeah, so just to answer the first part of your question, me actually potentially going to Saudi to play actually is something that has been in the works for maybe 2 or 3 years now. So before it got popular, before, the men's club team started buying up, all of the world's top football players. I was actually approached maybe 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, by a club to actually play in Saudi, but my personal situation at the time didn't allow me to accept the offer and accept the opportunity. So I just kind of parked it to the side. And then once, we played in Saudi again with the national team, and the same team actually saw me playing because it was in the Dammam. So the club president was at our game when Saudi were playing Pakistan, and things just kind of picked up and the conversation picked up. Again, after that, obviously, I am now in a different circumstance in my life, in my personal life and everything. So things worked out and I was able to accept the offer, and really excited for not just me but I think for what it means for Pakistani athletes. And I really does do hope that this helps start to kind of bridge the gap about a lot of times the talent that goes unnoticed in our country. We have such amazing athletes in our country, mashallah, and we deserve to be recognized, and we deserve to, be presented with opportunities like these, because a lot of times, we're getting overshadowed by, players, football player from a football point of view, a lot of times we're getting overshadowed by European teams, South American, or, more Western teams and players. So again, I think for me, yes, alhamdulillah, like I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but I really do hope that this does start to bring the right awareness to athletes in Pakistan and what we have to offer.
Well, now you haven't been with the team for a year now. Do you see there are other girls within the Pakistani setup who are up there with the talent who can be picked up by such leagues and such teams?
Absolutely, and I think this is something, it's about how bad, the athlete wants it, right? It's about putting yourself out there. If I hadn't put myself out there 2 or 3 years ago to show my interest in, playing abroad or anything like that, this opportunity might have not still been there, and it might have not come about. So, it's kind of twofolds, right? Yes, the talent is there, and there's such amazing talent within our women's national team and the men's team as well, but it's also about the athlete being proactive, right? And going and being ready to put themselves out there and potentially be rejected, be told no. I can't count the number of clubs or agents or anyone that have turned me away. So again, you just use that as motivation and fuel to say, okay, that's fine, I'm not the right fit for you guys, but there will be somebody that, in a club that I will be a right fit for. So again, it's very, very true that our team is very talented, and there are girls there with lots of potential that again are good enough to be playing in leagues abroad.
Perfect. So now do you feel like the real OG before Ronaldo and Neymar were approached? It was Maria
I
Khan.
do. I do. Yes. One of the originals. But again, I've been fortunate enough to be in this region for over 10 years now, and I've gotten to see the growth of women's football in the region and the amount of support and investment that's really going into it. And again, like I said, a lot of times what's happening in this part of the world really goes unnoticed and overshadowed by, a lot bigger federations, a lot bigger countries that, maybe are doing things on a more mass scale. But again, this country, Saudi, this region, South Asia, they've really been doing, some great things to really help promote the women's game. So yeah, excited to help contribute to that for sure. Even if I am, and that's the crazy part is, I'm doing this in my 30s, being married and have the full support of, my family, my husband. And I really just hope it does go to show like it's not too late, right? You're only as young as you feel.
Absolutely. And you have been a motivational factor for many girls now, especially that goal you scored. And like you mentioned, the age at this age is still playing and being picked up by one of the like relatively big clubs of the region and of course Saudi as well. And now speaking of the Pakistan team, like you mentioned, it's been exactly a year since we last spoke. So how has this journey been? When you came in, you got to captain the side as well. Has the side grown? What have you seen? Any potentials? The development of this game and the women's game overall in Pakistan? If you could wrap this up.
Yeah, I think for me, like it's been such an amazing journey. It's been a roller coaster. I think anytime you're involved in sports in Pakistan, whether you're a player, whether you're a fan, or an avid supporter of sports, it's always a roller coaster of emotions. You never know what you're gonna get. So I think for me, like subhanallah, it's been like such an amazing experience, and again, something that I do not take lightly when representing, the country. It's something that is such a huge honor to me and my teammates, and it's something that we never take for granted. And I think for me, the one of the best things about, this past year has really been seeing my teammates grow and really grow into, their personalities as not only young women, but as athletes, and really seeing their commitment, their dedication, again, the coaching staff as well. A lot of times, like we always joke about it, in the past year, we've spent more time together as a team than we have with our own families, right? So I think, there's always going to be ups and downs. There's going to be good moments. There's going to be bad moments. But I think, if you've watched the games and if you've followed our progress since last year, you will see such a big change in not just the team, but also individual players as well, like really growing and really flourishing. And again, that comes back to without any domestic 11-a-side football for the girls. So again, it's something that I'm going to keep speaking about because it's so important that, the federation and the government and whoever is involved really figure this out for both men and women, is giving a consistent 11-a-side league and making that accessible to not only the national team players, right, but a country that has such a huge talent pool of football players for both men and women. So I think that's something I'd love to see, is just, us being able to really focus on, the domestic structure and domestic football, but also really appreciate the development of the young women in our team as well.
I keep on saying both on the men's and the women's side, for there not being any proper structure domestically for you guys to go out there and play internationally. It's a miracle in its own, and the fact that you guys keep on doing it day in and day out, hats off to both your team and the men's team as well. And
Thank you.
of course, anytime. Speaking of that, the Women's World Cup just concluded with Spain winning. Who were you supporting? And this World Cup was, as they say, one of the biggest World Cups for women. How much did it do for the development of the game? Did you see your own co-players watching the tournament? And how much was that? Do you feel more excitement this time around and did more for the women's football?
Yeah, so for me, I have been involved in women's football for such a long time. I've seen women's football and I've been a part of women's football when there were no teams for young girls and little girls to play in. So to get to the point where we are with this Women's World Cup and having it just concluded, and kind of seeing that, for the first time we have a new champion, and there were so many first times for so many teams, right? You have teams that had qualified for the World Cup for the first time. You had teams that scored their first World Cup goals. You had teams that secured their first game in a knockout stage, right? So there were so many firsts in this World
Morocco,
Cup, and
South
it's
Korea,
2023, right? Like it's crazy, right? And it's it's for me this, yes, it's been one of the best World Cups for the fact that you can see that the gap in women's football among these 32 teams and these 32 countries and the wider countries who didn't make the tournament, the gap is getting smaller and smaller, right, in regards to abilities and talent. And let's be honest, a lot of these teams, even in the World Cup, their domestic structures aren't that great either, right? You look at countries like Jamaica, you look at countries like Morocco, right? Yes, they've invested a lot in really trying to figure things out in the past 4 or 5 years, right? But before that, their domestic structures and what was happening was very different, and they've been able to really come together as like federations and countries and say, okay, we really want to focus and invest in the women's game, and now it's shown on the world stage, right? I think Jamaica, for example, even had to,
crowdfunding to get to the
to
tournament.
put together a GoFundMe account, right? Because they didn't have enough money from their federation to send them to the World Cup, right? So Bob Marley's daughter, I think, was actually, helped fund some of it, right, to get them there. So again, I think it's been amazing to see. I was actively watching the entire month, and really, again, it gives motivation and it's an inspiration to girls and boys all over the world, for sure.
And which team were you supporting? Are you happy to see
I
Spain?
was supporting Morocco.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, from day one. So ever since I watched Morocco play in their AFCON tournament, in last summer, I was like, wow, this team is special. I really like what they stand for. I like what they represent. I like that, yes, there's players that play abroad, but also like a lot of their players play within the country as well. So they have a nice balance and they have a nice mix, which is actually very similar to our team, right? We have diaspora players, we have local players, but again, at the end of the day, like we're all Pakistani and we're all honored to be representing our country. So yeah, it was a really joy to watch Morocco.
Great stuff. Well, Maria, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure having you. And I know the next assignment for you and the team is Saudi Arabia. So best of luck for that, individually and for the whole team as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for always supporting us. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.